Dr. Hyunwoo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the narrow corridors of Station Gamma 7. The lights flickered above him, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. He had been working for 12 hours straight in his small laboratory, trying to fix a broken medical scanner. His eyes burned from staring at tiny circuit boards all day. The space station was not a pretty place. It floated in the empty space between 3 solar systems, serving as a trading post for merchants, travelers, and workers from many different worlds. Most of the people here were humans like Hyunwoo, but there were also aliens from several species. They all came here to make money, trade goods, or find work. Hyunwoo was different from the other humans on the station. He was not a trader or a merchant. He was a doctor and an engineer who specialized in making medical devices. The station's commander had hired him to keep all the medical equipment working properly. It was not exciting work, but it paid well, and Hyunwoo needed the money to fund his real research. As he turned a corner, he heard a soft clicking sound. It was rhythmic, like someone tapping metal with their fingers, but there was a pattern to it. Hyunwoo had heard this sound before around the station. It came from the Villani, a species of tall, thin aliens with blue-gray skin and large ears. The clicking was how they communicated with each other. He followed the sound and found himself in one of the maintenance sections of the station. The area was filled with pipes, wires, and junction boxes that controlled the station's life support systems. It was hot and cramped, and most people avoided this place. In front of a complex control panel, a young Villani female was working. She was smaller than most of her species, probably still a teenager by their standards. Her 3-fingered hands moved carefully over the wires and components. But Hyunwoo could see she was having trouble. The Villani girl would touch a wire, click softly to herself, then move her hands in the air as if she was trying to picture something. She would reach for a tool, fumble around until she found it, then carefully feel her way back to the control panel. It took Hyunwoo a moment to realize what he was seeing. She was blind. The girl was trying to repair a damaged junction box, but she could not see what she was doing. She was working entirely by touch and sound, using her clicking language to help her navigate the space around her. Hyunwoo watched as she accidentally dropped a small tool. It clattered to the floor and rolled under a nearby pipe. The girl got down on her hands and knees, searching for the tool with her hands. Her movements were careful but frustrated. She clicked rapidly, and even though Hyunwoo could not understand her language, he could hear the annoyance in her voice. Without thinking, Hyunwoo stepped forward and picked up the tool. "Here," he said gently, holding it out to her. The girl froze when she heard his voice. She turned her head toward him, and Hyunwoo got his first clear look at her face. Her eyes were completely white, with no pupils or iris visible. Her large ears twitched slightly, probably picking up sounds he could not even hear. She clicked something at him, but of course he could not understand. The station had translation devices, but they were only installed in common areas like the marketplace and the docking bays. Down here in the maintenance tunnels, they were on their own. Hyunwoo slowly moved closer and gently placed the tool in her outstretched hand. She clicked again, softer this time, and her head tilted slightly. He thought she might be saying thank you. "I'm Hyunwoo," he said, pointing to himself even though she could not see the gesture. He realized how stupid that was and instead tapped his chest. "Hyunwoo." The girl listened carefully, then made a sound that might have been his name, though it came out more like Hyunwoo with her clicking accent. She pointed to herself and said something in her language. Hyunwoo tried to repeat it, but his human tongue could not make the clicking sounds properly. She seemed to find this amusing because she made a sound that might have been laughter. Hyunwoo looked at the junction box she had been working on. It was a complex piece of equipment that controlled air circulation for this section of the station. Even with perfect vision, it would be a challenging repair job. The fact that she was attempting it while blind impressed him. He pulled out his portable scanner and ran it over the junction box. The device beeped and showed him a diagram of the internal components. Several circuits were damaged and 2 main power relays needed to be replaced. The girl heard his scanner beeping and clicked curiously. Hyunwoo held the device where she could hear it better. She reached out carefully and touched it, her fingers exploring its surface. Hyunwoo had an idea. He pulled out his electronic notepad and quickly drew a simple diagram of the junction box's internal structure. Then he took the girl's hand and guided her fingers over the screen, letting her feel the raised lines of the diagram. Her ears perked up with interest. She traced the diagram several times with her fingers, clicking softly to herself as she memorized the layout. Then she pointed to a spot on the diagram and clicked questioningly. Hyunwoo looked at where she was pointing. It was exactly where one of the damaged circuits was located. Somehow she had figured out there was a problem in that area, just by feeling the diagram, and probably by listening to how the equipment sounded when it was running. Working together, they began to repair the junction box. Hyunwoo would identify the broken components with his scanner, then show the girl where they were located by guiding her hands. She would do the actual repair work, her sensitive fingers able to manipulate the tiny components better than his larger hands could manage. As they worked, other people passed by the maintenance area. Most of them were human traders or station workers. They would glance at the unusual pair, the human engineer and the blind alien girl. But none of them stopped to help or even acknowledge what they were doing. Hyunwoo realized that most people on the station treated the girl as if she was invisible. She was just part of the background, someone who cleaned the corridors and fixed broken equipment but was not worth noticing. This made him angry, though he tried not to show it. The girl, whose name he still did not know, seemed used to being ignored. She worked efficiently and quietly, only clicking when she needed to communicate something important to Hyunwoo. Her movements were precise and careful, showing years of practice at working in a world she could not see. It took them 2 hours to complete the repair. When they finished, the junction box hummed back to life, and the air circulation in that section of the station returned to normal. The girl touched the repaired equipment and clicked with what sounded like satisfaction. She turned toward Hyunwoo and clicked several times in a pattern that sounded formal. Then she bowed slightly, a gesture that seemed universal across many species. Hyunwoo bowed back even though she could not see it. "You're welcome," he said. As the girl gathered her tools and prepared to leave, Hyunwoo made a decision. He pulled out his notepad again and quickly wrote down his laboratory's location and his work schedule. Then he took her hand and pressed the notepad into it. She felt the device and clicked questioningly. Hyunwoo pointed in the direction of his laboratory, then pointed to himself. He hoped she would understand that he was inviting her to visit him. The girl tilted her head, listening carefully. Then she nodded and carefully put the notepad in her tool bag. As she walked away, tapping her way through the corridors with a long metal rod, Hyunwoo found himself thinking about what he had just witnessed. Here was someone who navigated a complex world without sight, who could repair sophisticated equipment by touch alone, who had adapted to challenges that would defeat most people. But more than that, he realized that no one had bothered to create any technology to help her. The station was full of advanced medical equipment, computers, and tools designed to make life easier for humans and other species. Yet this girl, who was clearly intelligent and capable, had to struggle every day with tasks that could be made much simpler with the right assistive technology. That night, in his small quarters, Hyunwoo could not stop thinking about the blind Villani girl. He found himself wondering what the world looked like through her experience, how she navigated not just the physical space of the station, but also the social isolation of being different. He fell asleep planning. 3 days passed before the Villani girl visited Hyunwoo's laboratory. He was working late as usual when he heard the familiar clicking sound outside his door. He quickly opened it and found her standing in the corridor, tapping her metal rod against the wall to find her way. "Hello?" he said gently. She clicked back and he thought she sounded pleased. Hyunwoo guided her into his laboratory, describing what was around them as they walked. The lab was small but well-equipped, filled with medical scanners, computer terminals, and workbenches covered with electronic components. The girl listened carefully to his descriptions, her large ears moving slightly as she took in all the sounds of the room. He helped her sit down at his main workbench and brought her some water in a cup. She felt the cup carefully before drinking, making sure she understood its shape and size. Everything she did was deliberate and thoughtful. Over the next hour, using gestures, drawings, and simple words, they managed to communicate more effectively. Hyunwoo learned that her name was Nari, which she wrote out for him in her species writing system. The symbols looked like flowing curves combined with dots and lines. Nari seemed fascinated by his laboratory equipment. She touched each device carefully while he explained what it did. Her fingers traced the shapes of his medical scanners, computer interfaces, and diagnostic tools. She was particularly interested in a device that measured electromagnetic fields around living tissue. Hyunwoo realized that Nari was not just curious, she was genuinely knowledgeable about technology. When he showed her a broken circuit board from a medical scanner, she was able to identify the problem area just by feeling the components. Her understanding of electronics was impressive, even though she had learned everything without being able to see diagrams or schematics. That night, after Nari left, Hyunwoo began researching Villani physiology. The station's computer database had basic information about most alien species, mainly for medical emergency purposes. What he learned about the Villani surprised him. The Villani had organs that could detect electromagnetic frequencies that humans could not perceive. These organs were located behind their large ears and were connected to specialized areas of their brains. All Villani could use these organs to sense the electromagnetic fields produced by living beings, but the ability varied from individual to individual. More interestingly, about 30% of all Villani were born blind, but this was not considered a disability by their species. Blind Villani often developed enhanced electromagnetic perception to compensate for their lack of vision. However, their society still treated them as less capable, relegating them to simple jobs like maintenance and cleaning. Hyunwoo spent the next several days reading everything he could find about Villani neurology, electromagnetic perception, and assistive technology. He also began sketching ideas for devices that might help Nari navigate her world more easily. Nari visited his laboratory almost every evening after her work shift ended. They developed their own system of communication using drawings, gestures, and simple words from both their languages. Hyunwoo was learning some basic Villani clicking patterns, while Nari was picking up human words surprisingly quickly. During one of their sessions, Hyunwoo decided to test something. He brought Nari over to his electromagnetic field scanner and asked her to tell him what she could sense around the room. She stood very still, her large ears turning slightly as she concentrated. After a moment, she pointed to different areas of the laboratory and clicked in various patterns. Hyunwoo realized she was identifying the locations of all the electronic equipment in the room, even devices that were turned off but still had small electrical fields around them. Then she did something that amazed him. She pointed directly at him and made a specific clicking pattern. When he checked his scanner, he discovered that she was accurately describing the electromagnetic field produced by his own body, his heartbeat, brain activity, and nervous system. This gave Hyunwoo an idea that would change everything. Instead of trying to help Nari see the way humans see, what if he could enhance the way she already perceived the world? What if he could create a device that would amplify and translate her natural electromagnetic perception into something even more useful? He began working on the concept immediately. The device would be worn like goggles over her eyes, but instead of trying to restore vision, it would collect electromagnetic data from the environment and present it to her brain in a way that her natural organs could understand. The technical challenges were enormous. He needed to create sensors that could detect multiple types of electromagnetic fields, process that information in real time, and then convert it into signals that Nari's unique biology could interpret. It would require combining human technology with an understanding of alien neurology that no one had ever attempted before. Hyunwoo worked on the project for 2 weeks, often staying up all night to solve technical problems. He cannibalized parts from medical scanners, communication devices, and even some of the station's sensor equipment. The device that emerged was bulky and crude-looking, cobbled together from mismatched components and held together with tape and wire. Nari continued to visit him every evening, and he would show her his progress. She seemed to understand what he was trying to create, and her excitement grew as the device took shape. She would touch the components carefully, and sometimes she would click in patterns that Hyunwoo interpreted as suggestions or questions. On the night he finished the first prototype, Hyunwoo was nervous. The device looked like a strange pair of goggles with additional sensors attached to the sides and back. Wires connected various components and small lights blinked to show that the electronics were working. It was not pretty, but all of his tests suggested that it should work. Nari arrived at her usual time and Hyunwoo showed her the completed device. She felt it carefully, her fingers tracing every wire and component. She clicked softly and he thought she sounded impressed. "Ready to try it?" he asked. Nari nodded and sat down in the chair he had prepared for her. Hyunwoo carefully placed the device over her eyes and adjusted the strap so it fit comfortably. The sensors aligned with her natural electromagnetic organs, and the processing unit rested against the back of her head. He activated the device, and immediately several status lights showed that it was functioning properly. The sensors were detecting electromagnetic fields throughout the laboratory and converting them into signals that should be compatible with Nari's biology. For a long moment, nothing happened. Nari sat very still, her head tilted slightly as if she was listening to something very faint. Then her ears began to twitch rapidly, and she made a soft clicking sound that Hyunwoo had never heard before. Slowly, Nari turned her head to look directly at him. For the first time since he had known her, she was looking at his face, not just listening to his voice or sensing his presence, but actually perceiving him in a way that was similar to sight. She reached out with one hand, moving it carefully toward his face. When her fingers touched his cheek, she clicked again in that same soft, wondering tone. She was comparing what she could now see with what she could feel. Nari stood up from the chair, moving more confidently than Hyunwoo had ever seen her move before. She walked around the laboratory, her head turning to examine different objects and equipment. She approached his main computer terminal and stood in front of it for several minutes, making rapid clicking sounds. Then she turned back to Hyunwoo and began clicking in an excited, rapid pattern. Even though he could not understand her exact words, the emotion in her voice was unmistakable. She was overjoyed. Nari spent the next hour exploring the laboratory with the device. She could identify objects from across the room, distinguish between different types of materials, and even detect the electromagnetic signatures of different electronic devices. Most remarkably, when Hyunwoo stood behind her, she could sense his presence and emotional state through the electromagnetic field produced by his nervous system. When it was time for her to leave, Nari was reluctant to remove the device. She touched it gently and clicked questioningly at Hyunwoo. "Keep it," he said, gesturing for her to take the device with her. "It's yours." Nari's response was immediate and emotional. She clicked rapidly, and though he could not understand the words, Hyunwoo knew she was expressing profound gratitude. She reached out and touched his hands, then his face again, as if she needed to confirm that this was real. As she prepared to leave, still wearing the device, Nari did something that surprised Hyunwoo. She approached his computer terminal and, moving with new confidence, began typing on the keyboard. The station's translation system activated, and words appeared on the screen. "You have given me the gift of stars," the message read. "I can see light for the first time. Thank you, friend Hyunwoo." That night, Hyunwoo felt a satisfaction deeper than any he had experienced from his previous medical research. He had not just fixed a broken machine or solved a technical problem. He had opened up an entire new world for someone who had been living in limitations imposed by others, assumptions about what she could accomplish. He had no idea that his simple act of friendship was about to change the course of galactic history. On the third day after Nari first wore the goggles, Hyunwoo was calibrating a medical scanner when his laboratory door chimed. He looked up, expecting to see Nari arriving for their usual evening session. Instead, he found himself facing four figures in dark, sleek armor that he had never seen before. The figures were clearly Villani, but they were much taller and more muscular than any he had encountered on the station. Their armor was matte black with silver highlights, and it covered them completely except for their faces. Their eyes were not white like Nari's, but instead were a deep blue color that seemed to glow slightly in the laboratory's artificial light. The leader stepped forward and spoke in perfect human English, though with the clicking accent typical of his species. "Dr. Park, we need to speak with you immediately." Hyunwoo set down his tools carefully, his mind racing. These were obviously military personnel, and they had sought him out specifically. "I'm sorry, but who are you? And how did you get access to this section of the station?" "I am Commander Dae-sung of the Villani Defense Corps," the leader replied. "These are my team members, Kyung-ho, So-young, and Haiwan. We have been granted full access to this station by your commanding officer. We are here about the device you created." The mention of the device made Hyunwoo's stomach tighten with worry. "What device?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. So-young, who appeared to be the team's technical specialist, stepped forward. She was carrying a scanner that looked far more advanced than anything Hyunwoo had seen before. "The electromagnetic enhancement goggles you constructed for the maintenance worker designated Nari. We have been monitoring the unusual energy signatures they produce." "You've been monitoring Nari?" Hyunwoo asked, his concern turning to anger. She's just a young woman trying to do her job. She hasn't done anything wrong. Commander Daesung held up a hand to calm him. Nari is not in trouble, Dr. Park. In fact, she is quite safe. But we need to understand exactly what your device does and how you created it. Kyung-ho, who had been silent until now, activated a holographic display that filled the center of the laboratory. The display showed a three-dimensional map of the space station, with different areas highlighted in various colors. 3 days ago, we began detecting unprecedented electromagnetic activity in this sector. The readings were unlike anything in our databases. The hologram zoomed in on the maintenance sections where Nari worked. Bright trails of light showed her movements through the corridors. But these trails were far more detailed and complex than simple location tracking. Your device, So Young explained, has enhanced Nari's natural electromagnetic perception beyond normal Villani capabilities. She can now detect energy signatures through solid barriers, identify the emotional states of living beings from great distances, and perceive electromagnetic fields with a precision that exceeds our most sophisticated military equipment. Hyunwoo stared at the display, beginning to understand the implications of what he had created. I just wanted to help her navigate better. I had no idea it would make her into a potential surveillance weapon, Commander Daesung finished. Dr. Park, do you understand what your simple assistive device has accomplished? Nari can now see through walls, detect hidden electronics, and monitor the biological states of everyone around her. In military terms, you have created the perfect scout. Hae-won, who had been examining Hyunwoo's equipment, turned from the workbench where the prototype components were scattered. The technology itself is revolutionary. You have achieved something our scientists have been attempting for decades, true enhancement of Villani electromagnetic perception. But that's not the most concerning aspect. Commander Daesung continued. What concerns us is how quickly you accomplish this. You are a human, a species we considered technologically primitive in biological engineering. Yet you solved a problem in weeks that our experts could not solve in years of research. Hyunwoo felt a chill as he began to understand why these military officers were here. You think I had help? You think someone gave me this technology, did they? So Young asked directly, her blue eyes fixed on his face. No, Hyunwoo said firmly. I developed everything myself, using equipment available on this station. I can show you my research notes, my design process, everything. Kyung-ho manipulated the holographic display, and it changed to show technical schematics of the goggles. These designs show integration of human electronic components with Villani neurological interfaces. This should be impossible without deep knowledge of both technologies. I studied, Hyunwoo said simply. Your medical databases are available to station personnel for emergency treatment purposes. I spent weeks learning about Villani biology and electromagnetic perception. Then I experimented until I found a way to enhance Nari's natural abilities. Commander Daesung exchanged glances with his team members. They seemed to be communicating through some method that Hyunwoo could not detect. Probably the telepathic abilities that Villani were known for. Dr. Park, the commander said finally, we need you to understand the larger situation. Nari is not simply a maintenance worker. She is the daughter of High Commander Jiwoo, one of our most senior military leaders. She was sent away when her blindness was discovered. In our society, blind individuals are considered unsuitable for important roles. This revelation hit Hyunwoo like a physical blow. You exiled her because she couldn't see? It was considered a kindness, Hae-won said quietly. Rather than being a burden on her family's reputation, she was allowed to find useful work elsewhere. Useful work, Hyunwoo repeated, his voice thick with disgust. She's brilliant. She understands technology better than most of your engineers, and you cast her out because she's different. So, Young stepped closer, her scanner still active. That is our cultural way, Dr. Park. But your device changes everything. Nari is no longer disabled, she is enhanced. Her capabilities now exceed those of our best-sighted soldiers, which creates a problem, Commander Daesung explained. If blind Villani can be made more capable than sighted ones, our entire social structure is challenged. Military hierarchies, family status, resource allocation, everything is based on the assumption that sight equals superiority. Hyunwoo looked at each of the 4 soldiers, trying to understand their motivations. So what do you want from me? Do you want me to destroy the device? Stop Nari from using it? We want to understand how you think, Kyung-ho said. Human approaches to problem-solving appear to be fundamentally different from ours. You saw Nari's blindness not as a limitation to overcome, but as a different way of perceiving that could be enhanced. Where we saw broken, Heywan added, you saw potential. Commander Daesung deactivated the holographic display and stepped closer to Hyunwoo. Our government wants your research, Dr. Park. They want to understand your methods and apply them to create enhanced soldiers. They also want to ensure that this technology does not spread to other species or to Villani, who might use it to challenge existing power structures. And what do you want? Hyunwoo asked, sensing that the team's personal views might differ from their official orders. So Young was the first to answer. I want to understand how you saw possibilities where we saw problems. Your approach suggests that many of our assumptions about ability and disability might be wrong. I want to know, Kyung-ho said, how many other Naris are out there, living limited lives because we never thought to ask what they might be capable of with the right support. Heywan nodded in agreement. The question is not what you created, Dr. Park, but why you created it. And why we never did. Commander Daesung looked around the laboratory, taking in the improvised equipment and scattered components. You will need to make a choice, Dr. Park. You can come with us to our homeworld where you will be well treated and well compensated for sharing your knowledge with our scientists. Or, Hyunwoo prompted, or we will be forced to confiscate your research and ensure that this technology does not spread further. Nari would be allowed to keep her device, but no others would be made. Hyunwoo thought about Nari, about the joy in her voice when she first saw through the goggles, about all the other blind Villani who might benefit from similar technology. He thought about the implications of keeping such technology restricted to military applications. I need time to think, he said. Commander Daesung nodded. You have until tomorrow morning, Dr. Park. We will return then for your answer. As the four soldiers prepared to leave, So Young paused at the laboratory door. Dr. Park, may I ask you something? Of course. When you first saw Nari struggling with her work, what did you think? What was your immediate reaction? Hyunwoo considered the question carefully. I thought she was remarkable. Here was someone accomplishing complex repairs without being able to see what she was doing. I wondered what she might be able to accomplish if she had the right tools. So Young nodded slowly. We would have thought here is someone who should not be doing this work because she cannot see. The difference in perspective is significant. After the soldiers left, Hyunwoo sat alone in his laboratory, staring at the scattered components of his prototype device. He had created it out of friendship and a desire to help someone he cared about. Now it had become a potential tool of military enhancement and political upheaval. But Hyunwoo could not sleep that night. He sat in his small quarters staring out at the stars through the tiny viewport, thinking about the choice he had to make. Every option seemed to lead to consequences he had never intended when he first decided to help Nari. At 3 a.m, he heard a soft clicking sound outside his door. When he opened it, he found Nari standing in the corridor, still wearing the goggles he had made for her. Even in the dim lighting, he could see that she looked upset. Nari, he said gently. What's wrong? She stepped into his quarters and immediately began clicking in rapid, agitated patterns. Her posture was tense and she kept touching the goggles as if to reassure herself they were still there. Hyunwoo activated his translation device, and Nari's words appeared on the screen as she spoke. They came to see me, Hyunwoo. The soldiers from my homeworld. They told me things about myself that I never knew. What did they tell you? He asked, though he suspected he already knew. They told me who my father is. They told me why I was sent away. Her clicking became softer, sadder. They said I was supposed to be ashamed of what I am, but that your device changes everything. Hyunwoo sat down beside her on his small couch. How do you feel about learning this? Nari was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edges of the goggles. I always wondered why I was different from the other Villani on this station. They treat me like I'm invisible, but it's not just because I'm blind. It's because they know I'm supposed to be invisible. She stood up and moved to the viewport, looking out at the stars with her enhanced vision. But with your gift, I can see things they cannot. I can perceive the electromagnetic fields of their emotions. When they look at me now, I can see their fear. Fear of what? Fear that they were wrong about me. Fear that if I can do things they cannot do, then maybe their ideas about who is valuable and who is not are false. She turned back to him. And even though her eyes were still white and pupilless, Hyunwoo felt like she was truly seeing him. "The soldiers want to take you away, don't they?" Hyunwoo nodded. "They want me to help their government create more devices like yours, but only for military use. They're afraid of what might happen if all blind Villani had access to this technology." Nari clicked softly, and the translation showed her words. "They should be afraid. Do you know how many of my people are sent away like I was? How many brilliant minds are wasted because we cannot see with light-detecting organs?" She moved around his quarters, examining his personal belongings with her enhanced perception. "Your species does something different, doesn't it? When you see someone who is different, you ask, how can I help them succeed? Not how can I make them disappear?" "Not all humans think that way," Hyunwoo said honestly. "But many of us try to. We've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker." Nari stopped in front of a photograph on his desk, a picture of his family back on Earth. Even though it was just a flat image, the goggles allowed her to perceive the electromagnetic residue left by the printing process, giving her some sense of what the image contained. "Tell me about them," she said. Hyunwoo picked up the photograph. "My parents, my sister Min-jung and my brother Jae-hyun. Min-jung was born with a condition that affected her hearing. Instead of treating her like she was broken, my family learned sign language. My brother became a teacher for deaf children. My parents changed their business to make it more accessible for people with different abilities. And you became someone who creates devices to help people like me," Nari said. "Your family taught you to build bridges instead of walls." "I guess they did." Nari moved to his small workbench where he had been sketching ideas for improvements to the goggles. With her enhanced perception, she could see the electromagnetic traces left by his stylus on the electronic notepad, allowing her to perceive his drawings even though they were invisible to normal vision. "You've been thinking about how to make the device better," she observed. "I've been thinking about a lot of things," Hyunwoo admitted. "The soldiers showed me readings of what the goggles actually do. I had no idea they enhanced your abilities so much. They allow me to perceive the world in ways that even sighted Villani cannot," Nari said. "I can see through solid barriers, detect the emotional states of living beings, identify different types of materials from their electromagnetic signatures. But more than that, they let me see myself differently." She turned to face him again. "For the first time in my life, I don't feel like something is missing from me. I feel like I have something extra." Hyunwoo understood what she meant. He had always approached her blindness as a difference to be worked with, not a deficiency to be fixed. The goggles didn't restore normal vision. They created something entirely new. "The soldiers will return in the morning," he said. "They want me to choose between helping their government or having the technology suppressed." Nari clicked in a pattern that the translator showed as laughter, though it sounded bitter. "They want to control who gets to be enhanced and who remains limited. Same thinking, new technology. What do you think I should do?" Nari walked back to the viewport and stood looking out at the stars for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was determined. "I think you should ask yourself what your family would do. Would they help one government control technology that could help many people, or would they find a different way?" Hyunwoo joined her at the viewport. Through the transparent metal, they could see ships from dozens of different worlds docked at the station. Traders, travelers, workers, and refugees from across the galaxy pass through this place every day. "There might be a third option," he said slowly. "What do you mean?" "The soldiers assume I have to choose between helping them or being silenced. But what if I chose something else entirely?" Nari's ears perked up with interest. "Tell me." Hyunwoo moved to his computer terminal and began pulling up files. His research notes, design specifications, manufacturing procedures, everything related to the goggles project. "What if I made sure the technology couldn't be controlled by any single government or species?" "You mean share it with everyone?" "Not just share it. Broadcast it. Send the complete specifications to every station, ship, and planet in communication range. Make it impossible for anyone to suppress or monopolize." Nari clicked rapidly in excitement. "The soldiers couldn't stop it from spreading if it was already everywhere. But they would be very angry with you." "Probably," Hyunwoo agreed. "But they would also have to deal with the reality that the technology exists and is available to anyone who wants to use it." "There's something else," Nari said thoughtfully. "If you broadcast the specifications, you should also broadcast the story of how you developed them. Other humans, other species, They need to understand that this technology exists because you saw potential instead of problems. Hyunwoo looked at her with growing excitement. You're right. The technology is just tools. The important thing is the thinking behind it. The approach that looks for abilities instead of disabilities. That asks, how can we enhance what someone already has instead of, how can we make them normal? They spent the rest of the night working together. Nari used her enhanced perception to help Hyunwoo review his technical specifications, identifying areas that needed clarification or additional detail. Hyunwoo wrote extensive documentation explaining his design philosophy and approach, but more importantly, he recorded a message explaining why he had created the technology and what he hoped others would learn from his experience with Nari. As dawn approached on the station, they had prepared a complete package, technical specifications, manufacturing instructions, theoretical framework, and a message about seeing potential in difference, everything needed for others to not just replicate the goggles, but to understand the thinking that had made them possible. Are you ready? Nari asked as Hyunwoo prepared to upload everything to the station's communication array. I'm terrified, he admitted. This is going to change everything. For your people, for mine, for everyone. Change is frightening, Nari agreed. But staying the same when you know better is worse. Hyunwoo looked at his friend, the remarkable young woman who had inspired him to question assumptions about ability and potential. What will you do after this? The soldiers will probably want to take you back to your home world. Nari clicked in a pattern that sounded like determination. I will go with them, but not as someone to be hidden away. I will go as someone who proves that their old ideas about worth and ability are wrong, and I will help other Villani like me understand what they are truly capable of. You won't be alone, Hyunwoo promised. After today, there will be people throughout the galaxy who understand that different doesn't mean less than. He activated the upload sequence, and within minutes the complete package began broadcasting to every ship, station, and planet within range. From there, it would spread across the galaxy through the normal communication networks. There was no taking it back now. As they waited for the soldiers to arrive, Nari reached out and touched Hyunwoo's hand. Thank you, she said. Not just for the goggles, but for seeing me as someone with potential instead of someone with problems. Thank you for showing me what was. Commander Dae-sung entered the laboratory with his team, expecting to hear Hyunwoo's decision about joining their research program or having his work suppressed. Instead, he found the human engineer standing calmly beside Nari, both of them looking strangely peaceful for people who should have been anxious about their fate. Dr. Park, the commander said formally, have you reached your decision? I have, Hyunwoo replied. But I think you should know that the decision has already been implemented. So Young's scanner immediately began beeping with alarm signals. She looked at the readings and her blue eyes widened in shock. Commander, there are massive communication bursts coming from this station. Someone is broadcasting on all frequencies. Kyung-ho quickly activated his holographic display, and the laboratory filled with data streams showing communication traffic. The broadcast began approximately 30 minutes ago. They're being transmitted to every system within range. What exactly are you broadcasting, Dr. Park? Commander Dae-sung asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Everything, Hyunwoo said simply. Complete technical specifications for the goggles, manufacturing instructions, theoretical framework, and documentation of my design process. By now, the information has reached hundreds of systems and will continue spreading through the galaxy's communication networks. Haewon stared at the data displays in disbelief. You've made the technology freely available to everyone. Not just the technology, Nari added, her voice clear and confident. He shared the thinking behind it. The approach that sees potential instead of problems. Commander Dae-sung's face showed a mixture of anger and amazement. Do you understand what you've done? You've made it impossible for this technology to be controlled or regulated. Any species, any government, any individual with basic manufacturing capability can now create these devices. That was the point, Hyunwoo said. This technology shouldn't belong to one species or one government. It should belong to anyone who can benefit from it. So Young was studying her scanner readings intently. The information package includes detailed explanations of human design philosophy and problem-solving approaches. This isn't just technology transfer, it's methodology transfer. Other species will learn to think the way humans think about disabilities and differences, Kyung-ho observed. The implications go far beyond assistive technology. Nari stepped forward, and for the first time since the soldiers had arrived, she addressed them directly in their own language. Her clicking patterns were formal and precise, and Hyun-woo activated his translator to follow the conversation. "I know who you are," she said to Commander Dae-sung. "You serve under High Commander Ji-woo, who sent his own daughter away because she was born blind. You have come here expecting to control technology that proves his decision was wrong." The commander's posture stiffened. "Nari, you are speaking of matters beyond your understanding." "Am I?" she asked, gesturing to the goggles she wore. "I can see the electromagnetic signature of your emotions, Commander. You are not angry about what Dr. Park has done. You are relieved." So Young looked between Nari and her commander with growing understanding. "She's right, isn't she? You didn't want to suppress this technology or restrict it to military applications." Commander Dae-sung was quiet for a long moment, then sighed deeply. "Our orders were to secure the technology and ensure it remained under government control. But—" He looked at Nari, really seeing her for the first time. "Seeing what you have become, knowing what others like you might achieve with the right support, those orders feel wrong." "They are wrong," Hae-won said firmly. "I have a brother who was born with limited electromagnetic perception. He works in waste management because that's all our society thinks he's capable of. But if he had access to technology like this, he could probably perceive electromagnetic fields better than any of us." Kyung-ho finished. "The humans are right. We've been thinking about this backwards." Nari moved to the holographic display, studying the communication data with her enhanced perception. "The broadcasts have already reached 17 systems. Within days, they'll span half the galaxy. There's no stopping it now. And that's exactly what should happen," a new voice said from the laboratory entrance. Everyone turned to see Station Commander Wei-jin, a middle-aged human woman who rarely left her administrative offices. She was accompanied by two other figures, a tall alien with crystalline features and another human wearing the insignia of a diplomatic corps. "Commander Wei-jin," Hyun-woo said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you here. Dr. Park, when our communication array suddenly began broadcasting to half the galaxy, I felt it was important to understand what was happening." She looked around the laboratory, taking in the assembled Villani soldiers and the obvious tension in the room. "I've been monitoring your conversation, and I wanted to make sure everyone understands the larger picture." The crystalline alien stepped forward and spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "I am Ambassador Taemin of the Zeridian Collective. We received Dr. Park's broadcast 47 minutes ago. My government has already authorized immediate production of these devices for our vision-impaired citizens." The human diplomat nodded. "I'm Special Envoy Young-soo from Earth's Diplomatic Service. Similar messages have been received from 12 other species. Within the past hour, Dr. Park's approach is being hailed as a breakthrough in interspecies cooperation and inclusive technology development." Commander Dae-sung looked around the room, clearly realizing that the situation had moved far beyond his team's ability to control. "What happens now?" "Now," Commander Wei-jin said, "we deal with the consequences of Dr. Park's decision, which I should mention has the full support of this station's administration and the human colonial government." Ambassador Taemin's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. "The Zeridian Collective would like to offer Dr. Park a position leading our new Interspecies Assistive Technology Institute. We believe his approach could revolutionize how we think about ability and potential across all species. The Galactic Trade Union has made a similar offer," Envoy Young-soo added, "as have several other governments and organizations." Nari clicked with what sounded like amusement. "It seems, Commander Dae-sung, that your choice is no longer whether to allow this technology to spread. The choice now is whether your people will participate in the revolution it has started, or be left behind by it." So Young was still studying her scanner readings. "Commander, I'm detecting similar electromagnetic enhancement devices being activated on 17 different worlds. The technology is already being adapted for other species' biologies. And it's working," Kyung-ho added, looking at his holographic displays. "Early reports suggest that the human design philosophy is as important as the technology itself. Other species are beginning to reconsider their approaches to disability and difference." Commander Dae-sung stood quietly for several minutes, processing everything that had happened. Finally, he looked directly at Nari. What would you have us do? Go back to our homeworld, she said firmly. Tell High Commander Jiwoo that his daughter is not broken and never was. Tell him that the Villani people have an opportunity to lead in developing technology that enhances natural abilities instead of trying to fix imaginary problems. And if he refuses to listen? Nari's clicking took on a tone of determination. Then tell him that hundreds of other blind Villani throughout the galaxy will soon have access to enhancement technology, whether he approves or not. He can choose to be part of the solution or be replaced by someone who will. Haewon stepped forward. Nari, would you consider returning with us? Not as someone to be hidden, but as someone to lead this change? I will return, she said, but not alone. Dr. Park has shown me that the most important thing is not the technology itself, but the thinking that creates it. I want to establish a research institute where humans and Villani can work together to develop assistive technologies for all species. Hyunwoo looked at his friend with pride and amazement. You want to change how an entire civilization thinks about ability and worth. I want to change how every civilization thinks about it, Nari corrected. And I think the best way to do that is to prove that different approaches to thinking can create solutions that benefit everyone. 6 months later, Hyunwoo stood in the main laboratory of the Park Nari Institute for Inclusive Technology Development. The facility was built on a space station in neutral territory, jointly funded by dozens of governments and organizations throughout the galaxy. Through the observation windows, he could see research teams working on projects that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. Humans and Villani collaborated on electromagnetic enhancement devices. Zeridians worked with humans to develop assistive technology for species with crystalline sensory organs. Other teams were exploring ways to enhance abilities that had previously been considered limitations. Nari entered the laboratory, no longer wearing the crude prototype goggles but instead using a sleek, refined version that had been manufactured by Villani engineers working with human designers. She moved with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the universe. The morning reports, she said, handing him a data pad.